I'm set.
Okay, to start off, I imagine this would have been a real labour of love for you putting this CD together.
Yeah, it was. In fact, it was quite an emotional experience, I guess, because I got it started not long after Greg passed away 3 years ago, and so it was still a bit raw at the time, but in the course of doing it, it's been, very rewarding in other ways. So, but yeah, made me appreciate Greg's songs even more than I think I did before.
Yeah. I believe the idea for the project stemmed out of a tribute concert that was put together for Greg a couple of years ago.
Yeah, there was a small get-together up at a place called The Shack in Narrabeen in Sydney, where Greg used to run that place back in, I think it started in 1969, but in the early days before I met him. And that's where the sort of the roots of country radio were born, and most of Greg's songs. So there was a get-together for him after he died, a bit of a memorial, a lot of old friends. And so we got talking, and the idea of an album came together. And with the help of our friend Chris Blanchflower, who was the harmonica player in country radio, he helped finance the project, and we got it underway.
Greg always struck me as a very humble man. What do you think he'd be thinking of this album?
I would hope he'd be chuffed, I think he'd be, very excited.
I'm sure.
I would like to think, yeah.
How did you go about the process of assembling the cast of musicians for this record? Did you have specific people in mind for specific songs?
Well, yeah, I went through the catalogue of Greg's songs first, going right back to the beginning, and to his first album, Fleetwood Plain, and just started to select what I thought were the most representative and the best of his songs. And so I made a list of that was about a length of an album. Then I started thinking about artists who'd be good to cover those songs, and I went through and made a list of artists and matched them up with the songs, sent them off as suggestions to the artists, and lo and behold, they all agreed.
Ah.
So that was amazing.
So they were actually assigned the songs, basically.
Yeah.
The fact that
otherwise, it would have been Go on.
Yeah, the fact that a lot of the artists on there were contemporaries of Greg's gives the album a more special connect than other tribute albums might do, and sometimes you wonder if there's any connection at all between the artists that paying tribute to and the performers. But most of these guys were contemporaries of Greg, which gives us a more, I guess, a special feel.
I decided to take that route, to get his contemporaries and peers involved. Some people have criticised me a bit for not having younger artists on it, but I ran it by a few people. The younger ones had never heard of him,
Yeah.
And I thought, what's the point of having them on if they don't really know what it's about? And whereas his friends and people of his generation fully appreciated him, that seemed to be a bigger tribute to me.
Exactly.
Rather than just a sort of a symbolic gesture.
Yeah, it works beautifully in that way. Do you remember the first time you met Greg?
Yes, I met him in Melbourne. I'd been doing some session work down here and playing in a couple of bands, and country radio, who I'd seen on television. I'd seen them on GTK before I joined the band. I thought, boy, that's the band I'd like to join. Anyway, the manager, Gus McNeil, was down in Melbourne looking after another act that I was doing some work with, and asked me if I'd like the job with country radio. They needed somebody who could play guitar and mandolin and steel guitar, which I played two of those anyway. I didn't play mandolin at the time, but I lied about that.
I do remember Greg did tell me once that he felt that you kind of bluffed your way into the band with the mandolin thing.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I didn't really know how to play it. I just bluffed it, and they thought it was okay. And in fact, what I played them turned out to be Gypsy Queen in the end.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I went up to the audition, and I drove up in the back of a van with another guy, and I practiced mandolin all the way up there, tried to learn it. And by the time I think I got to Goulburn, I'd worked out the opening chords and verse for Gypsy Queen, I think.
Ah.
I didn't know what it was then, but that's what it turned into.
That's a fruitful drive, yeah.
Yeah.
He also told me once that his main regret in music was that he didn't listen to you as much as he should have and follow your lead and instincts. Did he ever express that to you?
He was No, he never told me that, but I mean, he always showed his appreciation of my input. From the very beginning, in fact, I was overwhelmed a bit by how generous and how welcoming he was for new ideas when I joined the band, and I think it benefited from that in a way. I guess it was a good combination, and because he had some really good musicians in the band too, and I think the interaction of all the input really made country radio what it was. But yeah, I wasn't in the band for all that long. I was only in the band for about a year and a half, I think, and I left to form the Dingoes. But Greg we had a great working relationship. I mean, we got on very well, and he really encouraged me to write songs, and gave me the tools to do it, I guess.
Yeah. Talk about some of the songs on this CD. The album opens brilliantly with Ross Wilson doing Just Goodbye, and with the late Ross Hannaford on guitar, it just makes it even more special, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's, I think, just about Ross's last appearance, I think, on a recording. I'm not sure, but it was the last time he got to play with Ross, that's for sure, which Ross noted as well. So that was, a nice touch.
Of course, the most well-known song in Greg's repertoire is Gypsy Queen, and done beautifully on this record by Paul Kelly and the Pilgrim Brothers. Did you have anyone else putting their hand up to do that one?
I had that in mind for Paul from the beginning, and I thought with the Pilgrim Brothers it would be great. And so I suggested it, and then Paul was visiting Broome, and I got an email from Alan Pilgrim. They'd been out in the back porch, and I think they were sitting around just playing Gypsy Queen on ukuleles and guitar and stuff. Anyway, he sent me this version on an MP3 of them just jamming it on the back porch, and I loved it. It just had that Broome vibe about it, which I love. I've worked up there a lot. So when Paul came back, and the Pilgrims were down in Melbourne last year, in a Cup Week, I think, and we went into a studio and just sat around the circle, just like they did up there, and recorded it all live, just everything, all together. So that's how it came about. But, yeah, I'm really pleased with the way that worked out. I think it's a great cover.
And, of course, the original recording of that song still stands up well. It hasn't dated at all. It's such a great recording. Do you recall the original sessions at all?
I do a bit, yeah. As much as I can remember those days. But I know I actually do. I remember the session where we actually got the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra, a string section, to come in and do a part. Those were the days. And I remember going to PCS, and that was the first time I'd ever been involved in a string session. And that was educational for sure. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was. But unfortunately, it was only the two singles that we ever really recorded in the studio, that and Winter Song, which were released as singles. But we never got to record a studio album with country radio, and that was a real pity. We only got to do a live album. And I always felt that the songs never got the real treatment they deserved, and this was a way to correct it.
Yeah.
All those years.
You mentioned you weren't with the band a particularly long time. You left in '73. Was there any particular catalyst for that, or was it just purely to go and form another band yourself?
Well, a couple of things. Number one, I guess, was Greg had this burning desire to leave Australia and go to Canada, which he obviously did. So I knew that was imminent. That was always being talked about. And so I kind of figured that, I was a young bloke and I didn't share those ambitions to go to Canada. I wouldn't mind going to America, I thought. But I didn't want to just pack up everything and run off to Canada. And so I knew the days were numbered of country radio anyway. So I figured, hey, I'd started to write songs and I had a bunch of stuff together that gave me an idea for a new band. And I thought, well, now's the time to jump.
Yeah.
So I did.
I guess with Greg leaving Australia when he did, and spending, well, obviously the rest of his time in Canada, and also a great deal of time away from music, I guess it kind of lessened his profile back here in Australia. Do you hope this CD might have the effect of reminding a lot of people just what an exceptional talent he was?
Well, that's part of the reason for doing it, I guess, is to have this this lineup of talent paying tribute to Greg. He must have been important, right? It kind of speaks for itself to people, I think. And because these guys wouldn't be part of it if they didn't think it was worth it. And so I think that in itself is a tribute, and certainly their performances and their generosity and their passion in doing it, was great. It was really, you couldn't have asked for better.
Exactly.
So hopefully this will resurrect his legacy. He left a fine bunch of songs which were never really exploited, or got out there and so people could hear them. And probably because he left Australia too soon, I have a feeling. Had he hung on, Australia, the music scene here was changing just as he left. I think he picked a really bad time to go, you know. And by the time he got to Canada, I think everything he'd been led to believe that the land of fruit and honey there was dried up, and everybody had gone to LA, I think, by the time he got there. So that whole scene was kind of winding down. So he got kind of caught in between. When had he stuck around here for a few more years, you know, he might have established himself more and made more albums and toured and become more of a well-known figure.
Yeah. Did you?
But these are the choices we make, you know.
Exactly.
I did the same thing.
Yeah. Did you stay in regular touch with him a lot during those years he wasn't making music?
Yeah, well, I was living in New York for a lot of that time, and he was living in Toronto, so it wasn't that far away. We used to see each other on occasions, and we kept in touch pretty well. And but then we got back together in 2000. He was down here on a holiday, just visiting friends and family, and we ran into each other and had a bit of a play and a chat. Decided we'd write some more songs together and maybe do a new album, which we did.
Yeah, which was a fantastic album, and the shows you did at the time were just brilliant. It must have been a great feeling for you to get back with him. Did the chemistry click again right away when you got back together?
Yeah, it was really good, especially on the writing front. You know, we just, you know, somehow put about a dozen songs together in about, you know, a few months, and it just seemed to work like magic, really.
One of the standout tracks for me on this CD is Richard Clapton's version of Almost Freedom. It's a beautiful performance from Richard. The song
it is great, isn't it?
Yeah, it just seems that song was a perfect fit for him.
Yeah, I thought he'd like that, you know. It's about the creative process and writing, and, you know, I thought it was up Richard's alley, and he took to it immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a nice version of that. Yeah.
Interesting version of Observations from Kevin Bennett, a more up-tempo arrangement than the original. Was that Kevin's arrangement?
No, that was mine. But I just had I just had an idea of it, you know, being not so stodgy and more light. And I needed another up-tempo song anyway, so that seemed to fit the bill nicely. I think it worked out well.
It sure did. Another contributor is Mike McClellan, who does an exceptional version of Clever Lines. That would have been very special to Greg. I believe him and Mike were acquaintances from the very early folk club days. Yeah,
they were very close friends back then. And I remember meeting Mike when I first went to Sydney to join Country Radio, and I got to play on his first album, and as well. So I had to get Mike in because, you know, that was so close, and he was perfect for Clever Lines because it's such a beautiful picking piece. Mm-hmm. And, you know, Greg was a great picker and wrote great songs built on really elegant chord structures from his picking skills. And Mike is a beautiful picker. He's one of the best. And so I thought it would be ideal for him. Plus, his singing is so precise. He gets the nuance of the melody that was really meant to be there. So, yeah, it's a nice version.
Yeah. Do you have a personal favourite track on the album yourself?
I told myself I'm not allowed to because then I'll be showing favoritism.
Yeah, fair enough.
I like them all. I think everybody did a great job. And, nothing particularly There were a couple of surprises for me, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, Doug Parkinson, who was also an old friend of Greg's, they went to school together.
Oh, really?
So I had to find a song for him, and I sent him that one, and Always to the Light, and he liked it, so did a great vocal, that voice of his.
Yeah. I don't think there'd be a song that didn't suit Doug in some way. He's one of those guys that could sing anything.
He'd find a way around it, yeah.
Yeah. Any thoughts?
He's a great singer.
Any thoughts of putting together another tribute gig now that the CD is out and featuring? I know it'd be impossible logistic-wise to get everybody together in the one place at the one time, but something along those lines anyway.
You mean like a concert or something?
With the artists involved on the CD, yeah.
See how the CD goes first. I mean, I've got an idea. I'd love to do a TV show. I'd love to film it, you know, live in a small club or something, you know, with all the artists involved.
Yeah.
But I'd have to find backing and maybe sponsorship for that to get the production to do it. But I'll wait and see how the record goes first. If it, you know, starts to get some traction, and somebody might be interested. You never know.
Sure. And finally, as a contributor to Australian music, what do you see as Greg's main legacy?
I think he was like our first singer-songwriter that people really noticed, that really cracked it through onto the charts. And in an era when it was, there were singer-songwriters everywhere coming from America, he was the first one who stood up here and really stood out as being of that caliber, I thought, lyrically. We hadn't heard lyrics in music like that before, I don't think, before Greg came along. He sort of brought a poetry to it that has lasted for generations. He set the bar for other people who followed, I think. And I think that his songs are his contribution. And I don't think there was anybody before him, but there have been plenty since.
Yeah, no, you've said it beautifully. Kerryn, once again, thank you so much for putting this CD together. Congratulations to you and Chris for all your efforts. It's a fantastic tribute, and I have no doubt Greg would be absolutely chuffed about it.
Yeah, let's hope so. I'll hear from him otherwise.
Okay, thanks again, Kerryn. All the best.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Okay,
Bye now.
Take care. Cheers.